welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, episode 242, Retro Review, Constantine. God's a kid with an ant farm, lady. He's not planning anything. I'm Ariel.
And I'm Andy Bowman.
And today we are reviewing the 2005 film, Constantine. Goodness, it's
2005, baby.
It's been a while. There's the 15-year anniversary, and with the Keanu Reeves assance, I think it is fitting. But most importantly, we are reviewing this movie because one of our best podcast friends and best supporters, Hassan, is here to join us. This is a favorite of his. Hassan, say hi to the audience.
Hey, guys.
All right, Hassan's been on here before. We won't get into the details of his geekdom and blah, blah, blah. We're going to go straight into news. Let's talk about DC Comics firing or parting ways with, so to speak, Dan Didio, who is one of the chief publishers along with Jim Lee, essentially one of the number 1 and 2 guys in charge. Andy, what are your thoughts? And then swing it over to Hassan.
This is weird. It's out of nowhere. I don't know what the goal of this is. I don't know the reasoning why, so I can't really comment too much. It's just weird.
Yeah, I'm with Andy here. This is just came out of nowhere.
So here's something. Dan Didio has been editor-in-chief or whatever role he had. He's been in it for 6 years. He's had 2 DC Universe complete reboots, like company-wide reboots. From the last 6 years, this includes things like New 52 and Flashpoint.
Flashpoint was like 2011.
Okay, so maybe not Flash. But New 52 was. Oh my gosh! Hold on. This is weird. So here's the general question I want to ask both of you. What have been your thoughts on DC Comics over the last few years? Hassan, you're more of a comic book reader, I think, than both of us, Andy and I. What are your thoughts so far?
Honestly, I was not that big of a fan of New 52 because I thought it was a bit more of an edgy 90s era harkening back to it because of the overall layout and aesthetic and edgy, hard-hitting tone of it. The only thing that I found worth redeeming for New 52 was that out of it we got the probably one of the best modern Wonder Woman run by Cliff Chiang and Brian Azzarello. And the whole Scott Snyder Batman. That's probably it. I mean, out of the beginning, New 52 was marred by controversies. They let go of J.H. Williams III and Blackman, I believe the writer is, over Batwoman's marriage controversy. And there were just so many things that just kept going wrong for New 52. And it was just like a really kind of lifeless and joyless kind of a reboot. And I guess that is why they just went back to the old status quo in Rebirth. I mean, even there's some lines by Jeff Johns in Rebirth where he basically just apologizing to the fans for the way they handled characters in New 52.
Okay, so here's a correction. It was in 2010 where Dan Didio was named co-publisher of DC Comics alongside Jim Lee. So it's been 10 years approximately in his role here. So that would include, Andy, Flashpoint. So we've got 3 essentially company-wide, crossover universe resets or like big shakeups. I'd love to see the math going back or see the details, the statistics, so to speak, on how often these big, universe-wide events happen. Things that force them to like change the universe forever, blah, blah, blah. Marvel doesn't do it in a retcon way, but it does, or Marvel doesn't reset the universe, but it does have, people die, people come back to life, people change mantles. They do that as well. I'd love to see how often those things are generally done.
One thing here, though, DC's been teasing the Doomsday Clock since Rebirth, right? Like, I feel like it's been a lot more drawn out for DC lately, right? I know Doomsday Clock has finally come and gone, but it took so long to actually address that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the Doomsday Clock was supposed to start this whole nice seamless transition, but it just kept getting delayed, and I think that they changed their plan significantly over the delay of Doomsday Clock. So by the time it came, the final issue hit, they were well into their other phases of Rebirth.
Okay, question here: do you guys think Dan Didio was pro or against the Batawang? You know, the famous panel where we got to see Batman's Wang.
I think he was indifferent.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. I think if you look back on Dan Didio's tenure and DC's tenure, I think there's a lot of big swings, and I think there's a lot of big misses. Hassan, we mentioned that the best runs to come out of his tenure, let's use that word, as co-publisher with Jim Lee, were runs like Tom King's Mr. Miracle, Tom King's Batman, Snyder Capullo's Batman, the Cliff Chiang Wonder Woman. Those are all self-contained stories that rely on the storyteller, writer and artist to craft something without the structure of the big universe. And any time there was a big universe structure, it didn't quite hit as well as they maybe would have liked. Would you say that is a fair assessment?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think personally, I love when you just let the characters do things and you kind of ignore the larger universe, because it becomes too unwieldy. Because ultimately, anytime anything happens in Gotham, the question is, where's Batman? Because Batman's this Gotham obsessed idiot, right?
I mean, we were just talking about people are still talking about why where was Batman
in Birds of Prey.
Like, who cares?
Like yeah, who cares, right? It's that's only a function of the universe at large. If the story doesn't call for Batman to be there, and the films haven't, unlike the MCU, right? The DC films haven't made it this huge point that everything's interconnected. And it was fine, but the problem is, like, I think you have to establish that early in a comic book run, and then just let it flow. Like in the MCU, right? Something happens, you have to explain where Iron Man is, because you've made it a point, I think, to say, oh, this is the universe where Iron Man and Captain America work together, and you've got to tell me why. I don't think that exists in the DC Universe movies, and I definitely don't think it exists in certain comic book runs. But it's up to the artist, the writer and the artist to establish that. But that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. There's I don't think any of the three of us are informed enough about Dan Didio's role and DC Comics as a whole.
And I don't really think that, based upon the news, the way the news hit, that even DC doesn't want anyone to know what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, Bleeding Cool reported that he was fired, but all the other reports were that he stepped down. He hasn't had a great tenure, I've heard. I did not see many fans or writers and artists just say he did a great job and they were surprised. I've only heard either he was terrible at this job or he was a great, great, great person. So I don't know. I think people throw out, hey, he's a great guy. I think people throw that too much. He could very well be terrible.
I mean, he could be if he was a great guy to someone, that person is obviously going to say he was a great guy. But if he was a dick to somebody, that person is
right. We don't know. So we don't know. We cannot comment. We have no idea. But let's move on to more DC related news and DC film news. There were updated pictures of what's this guy's name? Robert Pattinson Batman suit and a bat cycle, reminiscent, of course, of Snyder and Capullo's 0-year run, almost. Andy, what are your thoughts on this or just wider picture or more informed picture of Robert Pattinson's Batman?
Well, I mentioned on Twitter, I think, to Hassan, this looks like a very do-it-yourself Batman. It looks Like, he doesn't have an entire army of Wayne Tech people making his stuff. And I really like that. I like that idea. I don't know how I feel in general about the level of detail that this suit has, but you know what, Ariel? I will double down on this bet. Those are not guns.
Okay.
On his chest.
Hassan, do you think that the bat symbol on his chest is the handle of the gun that killed his parents manufactured to look like a bat symbol?
I honestly don't know, and to be honest, I really don't care. I just want, to me, the end product, if it's good, that's what matters. The nitty-gritty is kind of just nitty-gritty at this moment. And yeah, I kind of really like the suit. I really like the whole do-it-yourself attitude, because I always thought that unless everybody knew who Bruce Wayne was Batman, then only it can work that he has this insane amount of money being poured into his R&D to fight crime, and nobody's figuring it out. I mean, they even made a joke out of it in The Dark Knight Rises, where this one employee tries to blackmail Lucius Fox, and he says, "You want to blackmail this guy? Good luck with that." And that guy just got shut up. But yeah, I mean, I really like the do-it-yourself nature of the suit and the motorcycle. I think that is probably going to be one of those for year one-ish style story. So we're going to probably see him doing it a lot of it at his own, and then maybe at the end, we might get to see him being the full-fledged the video gamey Batman, where he has all the tech and toys.
Okay, I really like the bat symbol on the motorcycle. I think with Batman, I think you just have to be a little bit silly, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think Nolan's Batman was it was a little too serious.
I mean, personally, the more I look back upon the Nolan era Batman, the more I dislike it because of what the tone it's set up. It just, people took that tone for all the wrong reasons and just ran with it. Instead of saying, hey, this guy didn't really read comics, didn't really like comics, but he wanted to put his own stamp on the comic book. So maybe just let him do his own thing and maybe move on. Because one of the good things about Marvel is that they accept the silliness of their own world so seriously. And that's why we love their movies. DC had so much trouble accepting that silly part of it. Let's do everything gritty and serious and real worldy. And it just doesn't work that way, I think.
Yeah, and if you look back, I think Batman Begins is a pretty tight film. I think The Dark Knight only succeeds at the level it does because of Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
Plot-wise, that movie's a mess.
It's way too complicated, just like any other Nolan movie.
It's too complicated, and I think he does a great job telling you the story in the moment, using movie magic to make you think that what he's saying makes sense, but in reality, like, it doesn't. The plot falls apart. But really, I think you need to be, for Batman especially, you're like, this guy really dresses up and puts this mask on with these corny little ears, right? And he makes his plane in the shape of a bat symbol. Like, that's kind of silly. And you know what? Like, it's silly,
but even then, they try to rationalize it by keeping it as grounded as possible.
Yeah.
Like his bat plane in the third movie doesn't really look like a bat. It's just
a warplane. That's not fun. That's not Batman. I think Zack Snyder came out and said, you can't, I think it's pretty ridiculous to have two people in costumes like having a conversation. Sorry to besmirch the name of your Lord and Savior Hassan. But if you can't grasp that concept, then like you shouldn't be making this film. I think Nolan was the perfect mix of like not caring about it, but still taking that concept seriously enough. But like I said, I love the fact that motorcycle looks kind of silly. Like, it's like nobody would ever like put the bat head on like the front shield like that in real life, right?
Yeah.
But who cares? It's Batman.
And I really hope to God that they decide to move away from Frank Miller aesthetic.
Oh yeah,
because he is everything wrong with the
modern
the Man of Steel and BVS and Justice League. But that's just a whole other can of worms. But please WB, just forget that Frank Miller exists and only let him do comics and not let his work be affecting your movies. Please.
I'm not a fan of the suit. thus far, or the helmet especially. I think the helmet looks a little wonky, but I think that's a helmet and not his normal mask. When you look at that Robert Pattinson picture, Andy, any final thoughts on the Batsuit?
No, but I just realized how this movie is going to end. Right? You know, the Batman Begins ends with the Joker card, right?
Sure.
This movie is going to end with Batman going back to the Batcave, seeing something on the ground, picking it up. What is it? It's a smiley face with a blood smear over the eye.
We're moving on here, Andy. What's this news? What's this news you have here? This alliteration that is currently baffling.
Red rumors run rampant regarding Ross's role. Apparently, the Red Hulk is going to be in She-Hulk.
Okay. Red Hulk in the comic books is the character of General Thunderbolt Ross, who becomes
William Hurt.
Who you played by William Hurt. William Hurt? No. What's his?
Yeah, William Hurt.
No, yeah, William Hurt.
Okay,
yeah,
John Hurt
right.
is
the British guy.
William Hurt. Okay, you're right, Andy. We know that Ross plays or is the Red Hulk in the comic books. I'm curious if they're going to make a left turn and make the guy from Black Panther, played by Martin
Freeman.
Martin Lawrence.
Nope. Martin Freeman. Thank you, Andy. Andy is coming in clutch today with the casting. Played by Martin Freeman, if he will be Red Hulk instead. Because his character's name is also Ross.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Completely.
I'd love to see Bilbo go Angry Hulk.
Right? I think to me it's more interesting than Thunderbolt hypocrite Ross. I'll never get over that.
I just wanted to bring it up because I've been seeing it a lot. But let's go on to the next piece of news, Ariel.
Sure. Our next piece of news is this ridiculous news regarding a film that Andy and I we're looking forward to, but at this point will not be watching. Guns Akimbo. And this has nothing to do with the film itself. Instead, it has to do with its director.
Oh, man.
To have a long story short, the director named Jason Lee Howden decided to butt his way into a conversation regarding a film critic, and then start to lie and gaslight and cyberbully, I think is the most appropriate word for it, a couple of like black women film writers, and essentially sent the dogs out on them and just.
I think he tweeted about them that they were one of the people who forced another critic to
try to kill herself. Yeah,
and then they were not even related to the whole
right.
issue.
They were not. Apparently, it was like these people weren't online at all. Like during this time, and so he just went out there and was just relentlessly attacking and sending Twitter followers out at these two film critics who did nothing. And some people what they were doing was they were calling out another writer's use of the N-word.
And I think she said that she sent the word in her direct message to someone, and she later realized that she made a mistake, and I think she apologized for it, but then people just wouldn't, how people just wouldn't let it go. If you make a mistake, you're done for. And while I'm not condoning her usage of the word, but I think that the bullying went so far that she just tried to kill herself.
Well, she had been long had suffered from mental health issues and had suicidal tendencies before this.
Yeah, that's true.
But the issue here is not, the issue at hand is not this woman's use of the N-word. It's not the response of people calling her out for it. It's not the response of that. It's this director using his format and his blue check mark to harass people who had nothing to do with it. Black writers, black women. He decided to single them out instead of the no men who also, or who were, calling out this woman for using the N-word. No white women, white directors who were calling this woman out. He instead just singled out these two women that did not do it, and for some reason he fixated on them He tweeted from his personal blue checked account. He tweeted from the Guns Akimbo official movie Twitter account.
It's just bad.
It was bad, and he was relentlessly cyberbullying. I think Sony or Saban, who was the distributor, at first took the film off their schedule and instead came out and said there are too many people who worked on this film for us to not release it. So the movie will be coming out, but unfortunately, like Andy, I will not be watching it. I know many, many, many people who will not be watching it. This is a ridiculous scenario.
Unless they discredit him more from the movie and give his salary to some good cause, then maybe.
Andy, your thoughts?
I mean, I'd like that idea, Hassan. Unfortunately, the Directors Guild has like rules and stuff for getting credit. I mean, I just don't want to see this movie anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because it's ironic. The film features Daniel Radcliffe's character, who is an internet troll who harasses people online apparently, and then is targeted by this group to participate in like a violent game to reflect like the verbal, abuse that he does online. They want him to reflect it in physical abuse and how he, it's kind of like one of those films like trying to say something about cyberbullying. Now I don't know what it truly says. And I'll find out on the Wikipedia page when it comes out, and I can read it and not watch it. But this is crazy. This is wild.
And the funny thing is that he himself deleted his Twitter account and just went incommunicado.
Yeah, he's since deleted his Twitter account. But he's like trying to get people to tell those female critics, those two women, that like they should be charged for attempted murder. And it's just
they were not even part of the same company.
It's so ridiculous. It's almost like Ethan Van Sciver and his trolls, who come out and said comics need to be for everyone, and it's
I don't want to see the ugliness of the world reflected in the comics that I read.
It's ridiculous. Let's move on here to our main topic. We spent a lot of time on news. I don't imagine this will be a long review of it here. We are talking the 2005 Keanu Reeves vehicle, Constantine. I'm going to give us a quick recap as to what happens in the movie, and then we'll get into some other stuff. Hassan is a big fan of Constantine, and
I've seen it probably 50 plus times already.
John Constantine is an occult detective, a supernatural detective who can see half demons and half angels and can cross over to the other side, so to speak. He encounters Rachel Weisz's character, Angela, who claims that her sister has committed suicide but would never do that and thinks that something is up. Constantine and Angela then uncover a plot
to pretty much
destroy the world, despite there being a truce in place for a bet, a Job-esque bet between God and Lucifer. There are several key players in here, like Gabriel the angel and Lucifer and other a demon Mammon and other demons. But basically, it is Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, shooting and fighting against half angels and half demons. Andy, what are your thoughts on this film, or what were your thoughts back in 2005 when the film first came out?
Well, Ariel, you see, I was 15 in 2005, and I was not allowed to see R-rated movies in theaters. I have not seen Constantine since about 2 years ago.
Okay, was that the first and last time you watched it?
I just finished it half an hour ago.
Okay. So that was only the second time you watched it.
Yeah. It's so much fun. I had a lot of fun watching it.
Okay. Well, let's get into Hassan's early thoughts on Constantine back in 2005.
So I didn't get to see the movie in theater because back then I just didn't know how to go, and pretty young. I came to the US in 2002, so 2005 was a pretty new time for me to go anywhere on my own. So I waited it out for it to come out on DVD. And I remember watching it on my PlayStation 2, the DVD. with my sister. But it was, I mean, we were excited because back in the days, we used to watch the movie trailers on this apple.com/quicktime/trailers
Yes.
site.
Oh, absolutely.
And my sister actually showed me the trailer, and I was hooked. Like, I wanted to see that movie so bad. And when the DVD came out, and I was I loved that movie. And then of course, the unrepeated viewings, the more stories started to get in touch with me, because I started to reading the comics and to get a more better idea of what was going on, because there's so many things in the movie that kind of makes more sense if you have read the comics, or a bit more in know of the John Constantine lore. So it actually works. It actually works better if you are a bit more familiar with the story. But the movie on its own is still pretty enjoyable.
Yeah. Hassan, how old were you in 2005 when this came out?
Maybe 17, 18.
Okay, so you're a little older than Andy and I here. I don't think I watched this in theater. I did watch it on DVD shortly after that DVD came out. So I was maybe 16, 17 when it came out, or when I first watched it. I thought it was a perfectly enjoyable, like, action movie, and I always like Blade. Blade got 3 movies. There's no reason why Blade got 3 movies and this only got 1. And I always just like waited and wondered why we never got a sequel. It didn't make a ton of money comparative to the budget, $100 million budget, $230 million box office. The ingredients are here for a mega hit. And I don't know. I mean, I know why we didn't get it. It's not like a perfectly executed film, but it certainly does have. It's certainly better than something like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, right?
I think part of it was that not many people, not general public, was more familiar with the Hellblazer and John Constantine moniker in the first place, because John Constantine was more of a niche horror comic, even in Vertigo. Compared to, say, Blade, which it was more of a Marvel property. It's still niche, and it was a bit much more of an action movie, where John Constantine has a bit more horror and kind of a detective elements into
Almost
it.
Almost a Hellboy minus the big horns and the
They actually named it Hellblazer, but Hellboy had come out just past year, so they changed the name to Constantine to not mix up the names.
Well, I think they named it Constantine because Hellraiser was already such a big franchise.
Yes, actually, you're right. No, I mixed up.
Because the comic book is called Hellblazer, and so when I was like 17, looking for a John Constantine comic book, I never saw it because I wasn't looking for I wasn't looking for Hellblazer. I was looking for Constantine. Andy, what are your thoughts on the film now that you are 2 times inundated twice now?
First of all, I really think that the special effects hold up really well. There's a sense of almost a noir feeling to it that I really thoroughly enjoyed. I don't know. This movie really resonated with me in a weird way. Of it's kind of exactly what I wanted from a Blade or a Hellboy. Right? I feel like Hellboy is a little too, the Del Toro movies and the movie we won't talk about. I feel like they're a little too action oriented, and this is more just kind of I don't know, just a little bit darker, a little bit grittier, and I really liked it.
And it is pretty surprising because the movie actually was a first time job for the director Francis Lawrence. He was more of a music videos director, and then he went out to make some Hunger Game movies and Water for Elephants. I think that was another one. But yeah, that was his first movie, and I can tell that there was this style, there's certain shots that reminds me of some music, something you would find in a music video.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I really liked this movie on rewatch. I think it's got one of those cult classic vibes. And we'll get into this a little later. I think one of the things that this movie conceptually could have done better, perhaps, is I think it would have been better if if you didn't start with the end of the world. I think movies like the most recent Hellboy and the first Hellboy, I think too many movies are just like, I want to unleash the devil upon the world and like destroy the world for no reason. I think why do we start there? I think we'll get into this a little later, Andy. Something like Supernatural, okay? That happens at the end. When does the Yellow Eyes plot come to fruition? End of season 2?
At the end of season 1, I thought. Maybe season 2. It's one or the other.
But either way, it's a slow burn, and I think too many movies. I think they just want, you look at something like James Bond, where it's just like the recent James Bond movies are, besides Casino Royale, which is just a mission, right? We're here to undo everything you love, and those were like the last 3 James Bond movies. And so for Constantine, the first one is, we're going to summon the devil and somebody wants to destroy the planet. What if it's just, there's a demon? We got to figure out the demon, and we have some cool tricks with the demon. And I know studios don't want to bet on that, but I do think ultimately it makes for a better movie. I don't know. This was weird. I like I said, I really enjoyed it. I loved a lot of the characters. I just didn't like it. Only in retrospect do I not like the fact that they just had to swing for the fences and like it's the end of the
But
world.
I think in this one here, the antagonist has a better reason for destroying the world than some other end of the world, because in this one is it too early to say plot?
This is a
spoiler?
15-year-old movie.
All right. Some people still haven't seen it, but in the movie, the archangel, half breed archangel Gabriel, it is, because it's the angel is androgynous. We never know if it's a male or female. So it is actually very jealous of the humanity, that it is the only creature in the universe that can do as many bad things as possible and then just repent, and God will take the man back into its arms and is forgiven. So it wanted to unleash hell on earth so humanity could become something much more than it is, and properly take place of as a worthy creation for God's love. That was its reason to bring forth the devil's son onto the world.
Sure, but I still think that story is best served. That's like end of the world story.
Yeah, it's still a bit more of an end game scenario, which should have been reserved for the sequel.
Yeah.
But at least it has you can see that, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. What are some other thoughts we have in Constantine as a whole, Andy?
So one of the things that I kind of like, I asked one of my favorite film critics if Constantine counted as horror, right? Because I always, it's difficult for me to think of this as a horror movie. It uses a lot of horror imagery, but I don't think of this as horror. Everyone I know, I talked to my wife, I talked to David Bax, my favorite film critic, and they're like, no, it's horror. It's horror because of basically just of the sandbox they're playing in, right? Of there being demons and angels and stuff. I just liked this movie, and that's a lame way, but I just liked the imagery and the artistry that went into the craft of this movie, and I think all the actors were really good. Like Keanu took this super seriously.
Do either of you find any criticism or find any credit any of the criticism in regards to the mischaracterization or the change in characterization of Constantine from comic book to movie? So in the comic book, he is this British, more more charming, I think, more sarcastic, more powerful, if I'm not mistaken, Hassan.
Yeah, he's basically in the comics. He's basically just like in the way he's in the TV show.
Right.
But and that's what was the initial reason. But but then when the movie came out during the production, they changed it to when Keanu Reeves came on board. They basically rewrote the character to Keanu Reeves likeness, and at first there was a lot of backlash from fans that why are you changing this guy? But it kind of made sense because he's really bad at accents, and the setting didn't work with Keanu.
He's bad at accents.
For him to be a cigarette smoking, charming, cursing British guy who was based off of Sting, basically.
Do you guys know who was originally attached to play John Constantine?
Our very own Lord and Savior, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And Tarsem Singh was supposed to direct it. The guy who did that Immortals with Henry Cavill.
Right. But more importantly, he did The Fall, which is one of my favorite movies.
There's this movie is so. I think that I think what they needed was, or what they did was, they made this plot so. They just made the plot, and they did not make it. They did not cater the script or the plot to the character. I think they let the character. I think they, like you said, right? They had to change certain aspects of the character, so they needed the plot to be a little bare bones in certain aspects. Like, I think for Keanu Reeves, you have to make the plot or the action more interesting for it to work, because he's not an interesting actor. He does one thing, and I think he does it very well, but he does one thing. I think for Nicolas Cage, I think this movie's better.
I think it would have become much more of a zany movie that would have been remembered more for his acting than the overall aesthetic and vibe of the movie.
Right, because you just give him so much room. And this film has that, but Keanu doesn't do anything with it. I think you needed more, or maybe you needed somebody else there to fill in that zaniness.
Right. I think that the only moment that this movie really shows the comic book Constantine really well is when he is ascending to heaven.
Oh, and he gives him the finger. He gives
right, and he flips off Satan. Like that is a very good moment from a kind of a different character from what we've been seeing.
Yeah. Let's take a look at these characters here and see if we were to remake this or remake it today or remake it in our own image. Maybe if we can swap some characters around. This is one of those movies that I think is very ripe for remake. I know that there was a tweet out there, I don't know by whom, that basically said, I have a copy of Guillermo del Toro's Justice League Dark and it's incredible. And that really hurts me.
That kind of takes forever to make any movie.
But then when he does, it's a masterpiece.
Can you imagine if he had made the Hobbit trilogy?
They would rival the original trilogy, maybe.
Exactly, but he's too. I don't want to say it, but he's too lazy.
I don't think he's too lazy. I think he's a perfectionist. And what happens is, I think a lot of people think procrastination has to do with being lazy, when in reality, procrastination has to do with being perfectionist, where if he cannot get this thing done in the exact way it needs to be done. And we know that when you give him time and you give him resources and you give him space, that he makes films that are literally, like, at this point you can literally say Oscar worthy, because for some strange reason Pan's Labyrinth didn't win Best Foreign Film.
Yeah.
That was strange. But you have to let him do it, and you have to let him do it his way. I think Edgar Wright is a very similar type of thing, where Marvel's just like, yeah, we don't have time for this, and Edgar Wright's like, fine, I don't have time for you. And there's not Ant-Man is not better than any of the Edgar Wright movies, and that movie would have gone from a B+. I really like Ant-Man. That would have been an A+, I think, if that's Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
But going back to here, so John Constantine, we think Nicolas Cage, I think there's a very different. I think the movie is literally exactly the same, except we're talking about how awesome Nicolas Cage is in it. Is there anybody else who you think could fit John Constantine, perhaps in a more traditional comic book sense? The answer. Go ahead.
I can't get Matt Ryan, who plays him on Legends of Tomorrow and the Constantine TV show. Matt Ryan is just so perfect as him that I can't replace him. That's like Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. to me.
I have a guy who I think can do the Matt Ryan and do it better.
Okay.
Colin Farrell.
I could see that.
I think he is more charming. I think he's more handsome. And I think he's edgier.
And if you saw his last movie, The Gentleman with Guy Ritchie, he's also pretty funny when he can be.
Yeah.
And written well. He has a good comedic timing.
I think you watch him in Bruges.
Oh, yeah.
I think you come away very impressed with him.
Yeah.
The only problem is I think Colin Farrell might be too old now.
Well, now, you could have.
You could always make a more of a grizzled kind of a John Constantine movie. I mean, I personally would say Matt Nicholson.
Sure.
But I don't. I know he's more of a Nordic type of person, so I don't know how well he would be able to do British accent. But then he's an amazing actor. I'm sure he wouldn't have any trouble with the accent.
I don't generally like Mads Mikkelsen in leading roles. I think he works best playing off of someone. I think you look at Hannibal. I think he's awesome playing off of.
Have you guys seen his movie Polar?
That movie's terrible.
No.
It's so awesome.
It's so bad. It's bad in like I needed 2 hours to kill. Here's a dumb action movie bad.
So badly awesome.
I mean, it's not that was a waste of my time bad. It was like, oh, that was a terrible movie. I would watch that again in a year and a half. You know, it's like it's almost bad in the way like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is bad. We're like, oh, that's a bad movie. And then like a year later, you're like, that wasn't a bad movie. And then you watch it and remember it was bad. That's how I think he is best working off somebody. I think maybe he's better as a villain. Anybody else? Andy, do you have a thought for Constantine besides Matt Ryan?
I mean, I just want James Spader because I want James Spader to be in everything. But
in all seriousness, 1985 James Spader.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to 2005 Colin Farrell, I'm gonna go 1985 James Spader.
I would take 2015 Colin Farrell too.
Honestly, I kind of wonder how I'm trying to think of. It's Macaulay Culkin's brother.
The one from Scott Pilgrim?
Yes.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I really don't know because I think that the Constantine TV show is criminally underrated and just Matt Ryan's just there for me. And every time I imagine Constantine, it's Matt Ryan.
Okay. Rachel Weisz is Angela Dodson. Do we think that this character has anything more than generic, like, woman character in a comic book movie?
No, she was a movie-only character. She was invented just for the movie.
What I thought. It's not like we're having a Zatanna here or anything.
Yeah.
Let's skip Chaz Kramer as well. Tilda Swinton as the Archangel Gabriel. Is there any actor today besides modern day Tilda Swinton who you think could play this role?
No, I would say modern day Tilda Swinton. I can't see anyone else in that movie, or even in the remake in that specific role.
Kristen Stewart?
Nah.
Scarlett Johansson.
God.
She could play an Asian.
Right. Well, exactly right. Tilda Swinton played an Asian character.
Oh, okay.
Now we just need to. The transitive property says Scarlett Johansson.
How about? All right, moving on. How about Jimon Honsu as Papa Midnight? Is there enough of that character for us to really talk about?
Yes, and Lakeith Stanfield.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
Lakeith Stanfield works really well. Yeah, that's a good one.
I would also add a Daniel Kaluuya.
Oh,
I think Daniel Kaluuya is better. Like Daniel Kaluuya he's a bigger dude.
Papa Midnight is a bigger dude.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like Lakeith Stanfield, he's lanky. He's skinny and lanky. Yeah.
Although I would also add that Chaz Kramer is an important character in the comics. He's his friend, so we should also.
I don't think that character in the movie though.
Oh, in the movie,
I don't
okay,
think that character is enough of a character.
right? Yeah.
But here's the big one: Peter Stormare plays Lucifer Morningstar. Is there an actor we think could be a better Lucifer in this way or in their own way?
Nicolas Cage.
That'd be so bad. Just have Nicolas Cage as Constantine and Lucifer.
I think that Michael Shannon could do it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Michael Shannon can do anything.
Yeah. I read. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, actually, I do have a who I think might be a better Constantine. Robert Carlyle.
Robert Carlyle from.
He's from Trainspotting and The Full Monty, but everyone who's listening probably knows him as Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a Time.
Okay.
Who was he in Trainspotting? Bigby?
He was the. Oh man.
Was he the guy who went to the job?
Yeah. He was Bigby.
Oh, Bigby. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You lost me, Andy.
I'm sorry. I'm more cultured than you apparently. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll use that word. Okay. I'm going to give a couple of film versions of Lucifer, and I want either of you to tell me if Peter Stormare is better or worse as Lucifer. Max von Sydow in Needful Things. Any of you watch it?
Nope.
No.
Or okay, let's just say if you think that actor could be a good Lucifer, if you can envision it.
Max von Sydow. Yeah.
I think he could be a great Lucifer given the right role. Viggo Mortensen from The Prophecy, 1995.
I've seen that movie.
Dude, I was
That's
actually
great.
just about to say, I think Viggo Mortensen could do the intensity required of Lucifer.
Right. I'm just thinking, you would rewrite the role to this actor's strengths. Al Pacino.
Yes.
I'm out on Al Pacino, man. I'm out on him. I'm out on Al Pacino. The Crow Wicked Prayer from 2001 has David Boreanaz as
No. Wait. Oh my god, why did I not think of this? Fucking James Marsters as Constantine. Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay, obviously, I mean, you'd have to go 2000.
I mean, he's Sting. Like, Spike is based on, Billy Idol. But yeah, no, that's the exact person.
Yeah. Is there any other modern actors that we think could be a Lucifer? Bryan Cranston?
I mean, yes, he could.
That actor who's actually playing Lucifer in the now Netflix show, he's actually pretty good. Although he's playing a bit more of a lighthearted version of it, but if he's a good actor, if he can, he could be that much of a serious, menacing Lucifer.
Yeah, very different. I do like Tom Pellegrino from Mark Pellegrino, excuse me, from Supernatural. You watch Supernatural, Hassan?
I stopped after season 3, but that was because the life.
We'll get into Supernatural another time, Andy, but I think you and I agree he's pretty good in that role.
Yeah, he's really good. Alfred Molina?
I saw that, yeah. Alfred Molina would be an excellent, really going for it, Lucifer. Here's one that's not mentioned anywhere. I think Michael Keaton would nail being Lucifer.
Oh, absolutely.
I think you mix in a little bit of Beetlejuice. Just a little bit.
Funny thing is, there's a music video. There's actually a short film made by BMW for one of their cars where Gary Oldman plays the devil, and it's James Brown and Luke Owen, and Luke Owen is a driver who takes James Brown on a last race against the devil, and he wins and he gets his youth back because he was getting old, and Gary Oldman plays the devil.
Oh. Do we think Willem Dafoe looks too evil to be Lucifer?
No. Willem Dafoe is an amazing man who could be just kind enough. I mean, I think Peter Stormare looks evil, so
I think Peter Stormare is pretty great as Lucifer. What else do we think here about this Constantine film? Is there any cultural impact from it?
No.
nope.
Hassan sighs. No.
Actually, okay. I have a question for you guys. What country besides the U.S. do you think that this movie was most popular in?
I'll say England.
Germany.
Japan.
What?
Really?
Yep.
Why?
Yep. Japan. Japan did 26 million. For Constantine.
Was it because that was post Matrix, and he's I don't know.
I do not know. I can tell you the UK did 17 million. So, that was third place. But yeah,
Okay.
Japan. This movie was really popular in Japan.
Wow.
Keanu is huge in Japan. All right. So this movie is pretty fun. I think the format is really great. Kind of noir cult detective. It's strange. Like the movie's not super complex. There's not a ton to talk about. I mean, we mentioned, the best actor in it, or the best role in it, with Peter Stormare's Lucifer. What is your favorite part of the movie before we wrap up this conversation? Hassan, what's your favorite part?
My favorite part is actually the opening exorcism of the Filipino girl.
With the window? I mean, the mirror?
With the mirror. Because I was when I first got the Blu-ray of Constantine, I actually decided to watch it with the picture-in-picture commentary.
Oh, okay.
And the director actually said that because the girl was there's something she says when Constantine kind of looks at puts her face near her, and the girl says something in a demonic language, and that scene was supposed to be said in English, that line. But when she said, and the girl was speaking for Tagalog, and the director asked her to say that line in Tagalog, and he liked that with that translation better. So he basically said, like, why don't you just say your line in Tagalog? So that demonic words that she says, that's basically Tagalog for Tagalog translation for what she was about to say in English, because the director thought that the English just didn't have that punch, and when he heard that the Tagalog, he says, like, yeah, we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, the transliteration, I guess, was better in
No, it was just the same word, same line, but in Tagalog.
Oh, just the way it sounded better too.
Yeah,
okay.
he liked the sound that better. So like, oh, that's pretty cool actually, that the director would have that kind of insight to go to do that. I don't think most director would do that, but he did. So
yeah. Andy, what's your favorite scene?
Okay, my favorite scene has to be just the punch of Constantine killing himself so Satan comes up to grab him, making the deal, and as he's floating away, Satan grabbing the tumors out of his lungs.
Oh, that's the one scene that stuck with me from the first to the second watch.
It's such a great 1-2 punch of he almost has his happy ending. He almost has it, and then Satan brings him back to life, and it's I just think it's a great 1-2 punch between Satan and unseen force of God.
Yeah.
That, or the him holding Rachel Weisz under the water.
Yeah, that's also pretty good.
The comic beat, you have to really give it to the director for being willing just to kind of sit there in silence as she's under the water.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Last question here before we wrap up. Why do we think that this didn't quite succeed? We all liked it. We all thought it's pretty good. And everyone looks at it pretty fondly. Yet no sequel, no, nothing. There's no cultural impact. Nothing came from this.
I think that after watching probably 50 plus times and watching all the other movies during that time, I think that it just came at a bad time. It was, well, first it was rated R, so you automatically are like putting half of your audiences away. And second of all, it was based on a really niche comic at the time. That and the only bankability that was going in favor of the movie was because it had Keanu Reeves, who was just coming out of the Matrix hype. And despite being a pretty solid and fun movie, I think it just came at a bad time. And if it had come out today, I think more and more people would have watched it, because now I think more people are more open to try out any comic book movie. People are much more much more open to digest that kind of a property. But I think in 2005, it just was not the right time.
So I think that this is a movie that the general style and feeling of it wasn't being taken seriously by critics at the time. I mean, this movie has like a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's this weird thing where, because it was 2005, we're like right in the middle of, Nickelback and all these like just heavy metal bands, and this has a very music video feel to it. I think that caused people to not even really give it a shot, to take it seriously, and that's what did it. This movie was ahead of its time in many ways.
Even the Rotten Tomato headline says that it's not as good as its previous spiritual shooter Matrix. It's like, this is not Matrix. Stop comparing it to Matrix. It's completely different genres, sci-fi and cyberpunk ass. So right. Yeah, it's like you're right. It was ahead of its time.
I think you guys make great points in regards to when it came out. Blade was 98, X-Men is 2000, Spider-Man is 2001, and Hellboy is 2004. And if this movie comes out in 2000 and it's the same exact movie, or let's say 2001, right? The Matrix comes out the next year, this comes out. This is a much bigger film. I think the thing that killed it is Hellboy. I think, would you guys agree Hellboy is a better movie?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Yeah. Right? And they're so similar. I think part of it is that...
Well, they even used the same prop.
Which one?
The Spear of Destiny.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
No. That is actually the same prop.
Right. Okay. Wow. Here's another thing that went against it. Blade, the first one came out in 98. Blade 2 came out in 02, and Blade 3 came out in 04.
It's Blade Trinity.
We had three Blade movies and Hellboy come out right before this. And so we weirdly had, what's the phrase I'm thinking of here?
Oversaturation.
Yeah, oversaturation of the market of like supernatural comic book movies. I think a part of it is that the cross shotgun, holy water, and does he have like the knuckles? I watched this like 2 months ago.
Yeah, he does have knuckles.
Yeah, I think those things are a little too silly, and they remove the timelessness from it that Hellboy has. I've rewatched both of these movies in the last 6 months. I think Hellboy has a timelessness to it in a Batman the Animated Series way. And I think this one feels a little halfway to Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. But
if you look at the history of comic books, this is definitely if I were to make a list of my top 25, this would definitely be in the top 10s
of your comic book
of my comic book movies, because it's well made. There's nothing bad with it. Sure, it's fundamentally a bit weak, but it's like a workman comic book movie that you can enjoy no matter when it's coming out on TV or something. You was like, skip it on TV.
It is. It's like a TNT movie that you saw and I'm gonna watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts in regards to the movie or the time or the cultural impact and stuff like that?
The smoking, right? There's a big deal. This is back when the having people smoke in movies was starting to like become a huge issue. And I remember like reading online, there were all these issues with the smoking.
Interesting.
Keanu Reeves smoking. Yeah. That was back when there was a push to make any film with smoking rated R.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hassan?
I think that movie was not. It's not good enough to have any cultural impact. It's good enough to make a case for rated R movies. Because I think that the movie it had its own. It walks confidently in what it's trying to say. Sure, it doesn't. In certain cases, it doesn't really hold audience's hand. There are certain scenes, certain line of dialogue where the audience is like, wait, what? What is he talking about? And the movie doesn't really gives you all the clues, and just it puts you in this world and doesn't give you all the answers. So yeah, it's an odd movie, but it's I really don't think that they were going for any. It doesn't really. It's sad that it doesn't really have any cultural influence, because I think if it did came out today, with all social media and the way we look at Keanu now, I think it probably would have been a much more of a bigger movie than when it came out in 2005. I think if it came out like a couple of years later, it would have made for much more of a bigger movie.
It also, I think, would have had to been made a few years later. I don't think you can make this exact movie and release it after Iron Man and expect it to be a success. Right? Like, that's just the standard change. And then it changed again in 2014. And I don't think we've seen anything.
And it's so funny because I just watched it literally before, like, a couple of hours ago, and I can't imagine he looks exactly the same.
It's,
like everybody.
It's just the hair.
It's just a hair, and he looks exactly the same.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I think honestly that Constantine, with the success of Joker, like, bam, just put a $50 million into a movie, make it a noir, just slow burn movie. You can let Keanu do his thing.
He did say that he's interested in playing it again if situation arises. He's open to playing him again.
Yeah, I think it's been long enough, and his stardom has re-risen, like we mentioned. And since it's been so long, you can just make a story. I think the way to do this is to make Blade Runner, but the supernatural horror version. Give us a movie like Blade Runner, but it's Keanu, right? Where it's just like, it's Keanu, he's chasing a demon and there's a bigger conspiracy that's not the end of the world. As soon as you put the end of the world stuff, I think people kind of mentally go from this can be a noir movie to this is trying to be a blockbuster.
Because if you're going for the end of the world scenario, then you have to make your last act this huge battle.
Huge thing, right. Or it's like, this is Lucifer and we're all gonna die. But in reality, like, Constantine works better in these micro settings. Like Star Wars. Like, Star Wars works better when you're not trying to bring the whole universe into it and you're just doing micro stories. In a sense, Marvel, I think, is better like that. I think Winter Soldier is universally seen. Winter Soldier and Iron Man and even Black Panther are universally seen as like top 5 Marvel movies, and none of them have to do with the end of the world. But you look at something like Avengers, fun movie, not super rewatchable, well executed, but like, like those smaller stories are what we latch on to. Logan, Winter Soldier. You look at something like The Dark Knight compared to like The Dark Knight Rises, where one of them is he's trying to fight the Joker and the other one is Bane is trying to ruin Gotham City.
New York City.
New York, Detroit, Chicago City. But yeah, I'd agree with you there.
A funny thing is, I actually made I sat down with my wife a couple of days ago, and she saw Endgame, and that was like putting introducing someone to Game of Thrones by giving them episode 6 of season 7.
Yeah.
So they were like, wait, what's going on? Who's that? pretty
Or it's
interesting.
like starting at one of like the weddings of Game of Thrones. Yeah. It's really good. Andy, let's get out of here. What would be your grade for Constantine? Your retro grade?
I say B+.
Okay, Hassan.
For me, it's a solid A+.
Okay, Hassan's taking his personal enjoyment into there. I'm gonna go B. B is quite a favorable grade for me. I think last I mentioned I gave like Wonder Woman like a C-. No, it's good. This is good. Not great. Could have been better, I think, ultimately, but fun movie, great movie. In terms of like supernatural enjoyment.
I mean, it's still the fact that it's still watchable. It's a testament to its quality, because there's so many movies that you look far back upon fondly, and then you watch it and say, this movie doesn't really hold up. Yeah. And like Andy said, that the special effects still hold up. They still look, oh wow, this is from 2005.
Right. They're done in a way that they can be rewatched in that context. And I think things like the brass knuckles and the ridiculous shotgun, I think it pulls it from that conversation from purely timeless to pretty good, right? To like, oh, this is good for a 2000s movie, not, you watch something like Blade Runner, there's nothing in that movie that makes you think that it was made in the 80s besides the film quality, like the soundtrack, right? So yeah, we have one more thing here before we go. We do have a segment called Homework. Andy, why don't you start us with homework, swing it to Hassan, and I'll close us out.
Oh, man. My homework is for people just to investigate, see if you would enjoy playing a video game called Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is a game where you play a detective in the 1970s-ish kind of fantasy Berlin who wakes up without any memories, and he has to solve a murder, and it's a very story-driven game, and it's just kind of on my mind constantly. Not many games feature a character who's willing to go and have weird philosophical conversations about the nature of the universe like this game.
All right. Hassan, do you have something to recommend to our listeners for homework?
I have been playing a lot of Code Vein on PS4, which is basically just Dark Souls, but with anime waifus. And it's really fun. It's more of a melodramatic version of Dark Souls. And if you like RPGs with Dark Souls aesthetic, but without the whole punishing difficulty, I would definitely say give Code Vein a try. And I've been watching Fate Stay Night, Unlimited Blade Works, which is basically a second adaptation or first adaptation of the second route of the visual novel, which is pretty fun. I was scared into death by getting into the series because people have told me that it's really hard to get into, and I just watched it in the airing order, and it's fine. It's the animation is still pretty top notch. The fight sequences are really amazing. So if you like action heavy animes with some romance in the side, just Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. It's pretty good.
What's that anime again?
Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works.
Okay, all right. My homework this week, I pulled up the old Netflix, scoured through something to watch, was feeling a little nostalgic, so I booted up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, and its subsequent sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. Secret of the Ooze is a kids movie that has a lot of fun set pieces and is silly. The first movie, that 1990 Ninja Turtles movie, is actually really good. Like a retro, like A to A plus on my grading scale. It's got a really good script. It trusts that the audience knows its characters. The martial arts work of the guys in the suits is actually really incredible. They're like doing flips and stuff. Lots of emotion. I just think that movie is. I think, Andy, we should do a retro review. I think it's 30 years now. That movie's turning 30 along with us.
You guys should do a review for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles out of our shells.
Which one is that?
I think it says the stage musical.
Oh gosh, no, but that first movie's good. Not even like oh, it's a kid. Like that movie is more timeless than.
I only saw the anime show, the one where I'm not super familiar with the
How dare
TMNT
you.
lore, but the 80s TV show.
Yeah, with like the truck and the pink blobby.
Yeah.
This came after, and if you watched, I think the Toys That Made Us, they were like terrified that it was going to be terrible, and it comes out, and it's not at all for the target audience of the kids, but it ends up being like when you watch it, you're just like, oh, cool turtles, and you watch it today, and you're like, it's funny, it's witty, it's dark. One of the turtles goes into a coma for weeks, and you're just like it's way more adult than it should be.
Because I always thought that the Turtles was more of a kid-friendly property, and then my friend gave me the comics, and I'm like, whoa, this is actually really...
Yeah,
this is gritty.
Right. The movie's a mix between the two, and I think it does it really well. So that's my homework. That first movie particularly, I think, is really great. Andy, why don't you tell the listeners what we are focusing on for the spring, what our general topic list is going to be like.
All right, so I came up with this idea for Supernatural Spring, and this is basically movies that are kind of loosely thematically related to Supernatural, because Supernatural is ending, and I thought it was great to start with Constantine. One, because it's the 15-year anniversary, but also, it's angels versus demons kind of thing. It's very connected to what Supernatural was, and it came out before Supernatural started. This is that's pretty much it. Just loose, kind of slight sci-fi, slight horror, or not sci-fi, slight fantasy, slight horror overtones. We're going to be doing things like Lock and Key, The Color Out of Space. Ariel, you have a few other ones?
I think obviously we'll take a look at Supernatural. I think we should take a look at the Hellboy comics. I think those are underrated. I think there's a comic out there called Bitter Root, which is very good. Which is a black family in the 20s battling supernatural demons and stuff like that. There's a lot of really awesome stuff. I think maybe Hassan will take a look at some anime stuff if we need to. Plenty of weeks, plenty of things to talk about in the Supernatural spring of Geek 101. But let's get out of here. Hassan, where can people find you online?
I'm mostly on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Razfan, RAHXEPHON63 at Twitter.
All right.
Or just follow Andy and he could introduce me as this weirdo guy who wouldn't shut up about Lord and Savior Zack Snyder.
Andy, where can people find you?
You can find me online on Twitter at Hebrews Pale Ale and also on Letterboxd.
All right, you can find me at Dread Pirate Rider. You can find us at Geek 101 Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. Email us geek101pod@gmail.com. That's the way out for today. Class dismissed.